Longbourn and Sons was not a very large firm. It consisted of her father, boorish and barely 20-year-old Collins, 3 other solicitors, 2 clerks, and Charlotte the secretary. Nonetheless, Lizzie seethed as she watched Collins publicly claim credit for evidence that she herself had discovered. "I am going to wring his neck," she muttered, just loudly enough for Charlotte to cast a concerned glance in her direction. "The important thing is that an innocent man will soon be free," Charlotte said. "I suppose. Lizzie, you know that in all likelihood—" Charlotte trailed off, knowing that she was dredging up something Lizzie knew all too well. She could not argue Mr. Davis's case herself, no matter how much she longed to be called to the bar. It was no matter. Even if the courts would allow for a woman barrister, first she would have to convince her father that such a calling was appropriate for his beloved 17-year-old daughter. "I know," Lizzie said, "but that doesn't mean he had any right to steal my work." Collins accepted handshakes and claps on the shoulder from the other solicitors and clerks, while Mr. Bennet studied the letters. Gradually, the room quieted again as they waited for Mr. Bennet to pronounce his judgment. "This is good, Collins, very good. I will speak to the magistrate straight away." He paused heavily, then added, "Of course, our client is not innocent." "Yes, he is. I've just told you, sir." Collins smiled at Mr. Bennet in a condescending manner that Lizzie positively loathed. Lizzie's greatest strength was the quickness of her mind, but her greatest weakness, according to her mother, was the quickness of her tongue. "Our client is Mrs. Davis," she proclaimed loudly, unable to stand it any longer, "and she is most certainly guilty." Truly, the amount of patience Lizzie had to exert in this office was immeasurable. Collins should have been embarrassed by his fumble, but he didn't appear to be. In fact, he didn't even turn to acknowledge the young woman who corrected him. "Mr. Davis, Mrs. Davis, who cares? I should think that Mr. Davis will be so indebted to us for securing his release from prison that he'd be willing to pay us a small fortune." "Don't count on it. The nature of marriage is mysterious, and besides, Mr. Davis may not have the funds." Mr. Bennet sighed. "Papa, James Davis is the younger nephew of a baronet," Lizzie interjected, "by marriage, but perhaps he will be grateful to the firm for keeping his relative's name out of the mud." Lizzie let the suggestion dangle, enjoying the way that Collins's eyes bulged with shock. "How do you know that?" "Mrs. Davis told me herself. Did she not mention that when you called?" Lizzie let her stare dig into Collins, hoping for some veil of regret or shame, but finding none, she turned back to her father and said, "It's quite marvellous, the things one hears when visiting Miss Lucas." Visiting Miss Lucas was the code phrase that Lizzie and her father used when Lizzie helped out around the office. Longbourn and Sons, though well established and of good reputation, was not a flourishing business. Between Mr. Bennet's preference for studying the law rather than practicing it, and his bumbling junior partner, the firm struggled, even with Lizzie's assistance behind the scenes. "Very good," Mr. Bennet said. "Step into my office, if you please, Elizabeth." Lizzie was all too glad to sweep past an irritated Collins and into her father's office. It was frightfully messy, and her favourite room in all the world. It always smelled of ink and paper, and rich pipe tobacco, which her mother strictly forbade her father from enjoying at home. The surface of the great oak desk was covered in books, papers, and a good number of half-empty inkpots. Although the mess itched at Lizzie's inclination for order, she loved everything that this room represented: knowledge, hard work, quick thinking, the pursuit of justice. The cases that unfolded in this room were far more fascinating to her than any drama that occurred in the drawing-room. "Papa," she began once they were seated, "Mr. Collins has been lying again." "Of course he has. Do you think that I'd believe for an instant Collins would call upon Mrs. Davis? He doesn't have an enterprising bone in his body." Lizzie smiled. Good. This was going to be easier than she'd thought. "However, you mustn't goad him in front of the others, Elizabeth. He will be their superior one day, and it does no good to make him look a fool."